What is going on, basketball lovers and hoopheads? Welcome back to the Check Out Basketball Podcast, where I'm your host, Bryce, here as always to take you through the weekend that was in the NBA. We've got some fun topics to talk about today. I've got a couple of big time takeaways to spit at you. We got a couple bits of unfortunate injury news. Nothing crazy, nothing cratering anybody's season, but a couple of things to talk about. We'll dive into my takeaways later. We'll look at some things I'm looking at moving forward. You know the drill. Let's start up at the top with a little bit of news. First thing, good news, bad news. I don't know how you feel about this, but Trae Young, shockingly, can you believe it, is going to play basketball again this season. Shams Charania tweeted out earlier today that he is going to make his season debut for the Washington Wizards on Thursday. I don't know who they're playing on Thursday. We'll find that out real quick. But yeah, I can't believe this must be pressure from the NBA, right? This must be coming from the league office or something. Why the hell is he playing this season? Who knows? But he is going to. That's fun, I guess. The Wizards need something at this point in the season. It's pretty rough. Otherwise, I was just watching. I was watching a little bit of their game against the Houston Rockets right now, and although it's somewhat close, man, the Wizards are a dysfunctional team to watch. That's to say the least. I like them actually probably a lot more than a couple of other tanking teams, but man, defensively that team is rough to watch. But hey, Trae Young's coming back. He ain't gonna help that defense, baby, but it'll be nice to have a vet around, somebody to dribble the ball, somebody to pass the ball, somebody who knows how to pass the ball, and is proficient in that. Will be good to have around. So shouts to Trae Young. I can't believe you're playing this year. Good on you, man. There must have been the league with the tyranny that they're imposing, sending all of their league doctors, their evil league doctors to all of these teams, all of these like tanking teams, and they're like having their doctors reevaluate these tanking teams as guys. They must have sent one to Washington, and they were like, "You got to play this dude. You got to play this dude, or otherwise you're getting fined like $2 million every game or something." But can't believe he's back. Shouts to Trae Young. I suppose it'll be fun. I'll be watching. Other than that, we got a couple of bits of injury news. One is that James Harden, who was revealed late last week, had a fracture in his thumb, is playing basketball again. He played just yesterday, Sunday, against the Brooklyn Nets. Boy, howdy did the Cavs need that in their 4-point win over the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah, nice. I think I mentioned on Friday's podcast that like it was pretty clear that Harden was going to try to play through this injury, and that's cool. And he had a really good game on Sunday. Hopefully this doesn't like derail the entire Cavs season, because there was a lot of energy and good vibes coming out of Cleveland post Harden trade. So that's exciting. Also, in conjunction with the James Harden trade, Darius Garland is making his season debut, I believe, for the Los Angeles Clippers tonight. They are playing the Warriors. Ooh, ugly game, but I believe it was reported that Darius Garland is playing tonight. I'm going to fact check that while I talk about a couple of other things. It was revealed that Joel Embiid, not Darius Embiid, Joel Embiid is strained his oblique. That's not fun. Your oblique, straining your abs. He strained his oblique. He's only going to miss 3 games, but another unfortunate injury for Joel Embiid in the Philadelphia 76ers. He has been playing well when he's been in as of late, so unfortunate to see that guy miss any time, but maybe this gives his knees and his legs a little bit of rest, much needed rest at this point in the season. We also got news that Steph Curry is going to miss another 10 days, is the timeline they're putting it at. So 10 days with this kind of runner's knee issue he's been dealing with. I heard some other podcasts talking about it today, and just thinking on my own, like, I can't remember the last time we had an injury with runner's knee in the NBA. That's a new one. Really unfortunate, and kind of knowing what, like, if you've ever had anything resembling like runner's knee or like shin splints or anything like that, it's hard. It's not really like a thing you can kind of work back from. It's just you have to wait for the pain to reside. And with how movement forward Curry's game is, I suppose this makes sense. It's unfortunate. Get well soon, my king. I hope you're back out on the court before long. But yeah, this is not derailing the Warrior season, because the Warrior season was already derailed with the Jimmy Butler injury. But this is just further kind of putting the nail in the coffin on this season, and maybe Steph Curry's tenure in Golden State as like a contending, or, the primary player on a contending team, which is unfortunate. But the sun sets on us all. Hopefully, Steph, I hope you get back healthy. Still one of the best players to watch in the world of basketball. I did double check it, by the way. Darius Garland is playing tonight against the Warriors, so that'll be fun. I will definitely be tuned in for that one. We have Norm Powell. It was announced on Friday was going to miss a week with some injuries, so that's big for the Heat, who are still jostling for play-in position. They are currently the 8th seed, but we could see them fall back to the 9th seed. There's only 1.5 games of separation between them and the Atlanta Hawks, 2 games between them and the Charlotte Hornets. So if you care about the East play-in, Norm Powell is hurt right now. And there's actually a pretty big game on Saturday, I think it is. It's later this week, but we have Hornets versus Miami battling things out. We'll see if Norm Powell's back for that one. He's only supposed to miss about a week. That was, I think, most of like the significant injury news. And then in a perfect piece of news, in one that is very, very funny, and one that just cosmically feels destined, the Atlanta Hawks have returned to 31-31 on the season. And there was a Hawks beat writer. I wish I could credit him right now, but there was a Hawks dude who tweeted out on Twitter that the Hawks this season have scored exactly 1 more point than they've allowed on the defense. 31-31, 62 games in. 1 more point scored on offense than they've allowed on defense. That's incredible. And there were plenty of other, like, if you go through the threads on Twitter, like if you want to look this stuff up, it's really funny. There's all sorts of stuff about how over the past, like, I don't know how many games, but it's like several seasons going back where the Hawks just, they've consistently been this like 500 team. They win 40 to 42 games every single year, and it feels eternal, and it feels like they'll never get out of there because they literally never do. There's some you can go like way far back with this finishing 500 every season. So it looks like we're headed right there this season. We're on track. Go Hawks, caw, right? Birds, let's go Birds. Good for them. Man, but yeah, the scoring exactly 1 more point than you've allowed in being 31-31, that's unreal. There's just a weird like coincidence thing, like one of these variance things that I'm just not sure I've ever seen in any other sport ever, especially one with like as many games and as many points like scored and allowed as basketball. That's incredible. There's like 100 points being scored every single night, and somehow 60 games in, you have almost exactly the same amount of points scored as points allowed. That's so dumb, but fun. I love it. Shouts out to the Hawks. I thought you would be so good this season, and I've been left a little short of those lofty expectations, but that's okay. Happens to the best of us. That's all the news that I have for you. Tyus Jones signed with the Denver Nuggets. I forgot to write that down because I did all my notes before the Tyus Jones signing. But hey, Tyus Jones, famously, he's been really good this year. He's been, I think this is technically his 4th team this year because he started the year with Orlando, got traded to Charlotte at the deadline, then rerouted from Charlotte to Dallas, and now Dallas has released him, and he is signing with the Denver Nuggets. Always a good sign when a guy gets passed around and nobody seemingly wants him. He's going to come in there and fix up all the problems with the Nuggets. And speaking of the Nuggets, let's talk about them and some of their problems. That's going to be my first takeaway. Denver's been a hot button topic, especially as of recent. I'm not going to talk about their games over the weekend. As a Thunder fan, I don't want to comment on what happened on Friday night, but they did lose. And then on Sunday, the Denver Nuggets lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves. On the season, the Nuggets are currently 37-24. They are the 5th seed in the Western Conference. There is a single game that separates them from the 3 seed, and there is only a half a game that separates them from the 6 seed in the Los Angeles Lakers. They currently have the second best offense by offensive rating in the entire NBA and the 21st defense on the season. They've had a really weird year. Nikola Jokic suffered his first big career injury where he missed about a month and some time in late December on throughout January, and so the Nuggets kind of had to figure things out without him. It felt like they did. We saw Peyton Watson have an incredible run over that time where he averaged 20 points per game, looking like a guy who could step in once Jokic is back and be the tertiary or the 4th best scorer on this team. He looked like a guy who was ready to contribute at a super high level. All of these dudes on the bench, Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, Zeke Naji, felt like they really stepped up over that time and might be ready to contribute more to a Nikola Jokic-led team. They posted a much better record in that time. And then Jokic comes back, and they're 5-8 since Jokic has returned, and it just really hasn't felt right, and nothing has felt right for them all season. Now, Christian Braun and Aaron Gordon both got injured early in the season. Aaron Gordon is still currently out, and he is not playing. He's been dealing with lingering hamstring issues all season long. Who knows where that resolves? He's supposed to come back sometime soon, but hamstring injuries are really tricky. They're really tricky to come back from, and who knows how long they really take to heal. It felt like maybe not that those injuries were a blessing, but they were a way for some of the rest of the team to kind of figure themselves out. Maybe it would give Cam Johnson some time to settle in. We saw Peyton Watson flourish. Again, some of these bench guys, the Julian Strawthers, Jalen Pickett, Zeke Najis, just all these kind of bit part guys. It would open up some minutes for them, open up some possibilities for them to play. And then once you see this whole team come back together and get healthy, then maybe things would be rectified. But that's not happening. We are returning to Nuggets problems of old. I think Jokic, after having a shaky couple of weeks in returning from injury personally, he feels like he's kind of back to regular, healthy, normal Jokic. The turnovers have come down a little bit. The efficiency is popping back up. And when he's on the floor, the team is performing really well. The lineups with Jokic, of course, performing very well, and they're beating very good teams. But we're back to the old Nuggets problems where the lineups when Jokic is off the floor are just not performing enough. And this team is just kind of not crumbling right now, but they are most certainly struggling. See, the problem in the past with the Nuggets was when Jokic and Murray are in the game, or just when Jokic is in the game at all, the Nuggets slaughter teams. And in the 15 minutes or whatever a game that he sits, the Nuggets get killed. Who knows why? There's some sort of cosmic imbalance with it. They just cannot produce decent lineups without Jokic on the floor. It's been a struggle forever. But then the Nuggets forever were one of the best clutch teams in the NBA. So let's say Jokic sits at the start of a fourth quarter just in the rotation. Some team closes a 10-point lead to maybe a 2-point lead, or maybe the other team takes the lead. Well, the Nuggets would put Jokic back in the game, and then Jokic and Murray would just close this thing out. They'd go a 2-man game, and they would just close this thing out. Now we have a compounding issue where a lot of these Jokic-less Nuggets lineups have been performing really poor, especially as of late. All of these guys who kind of contributed in bit parts are reverting back to what we've always kind of known them as. And then in the clutch, the Nuggets have just been terrible. So even just over the weekend here, right, in the 17 minutes that Jokic didn't play against the Thunder and against the Timberwolves, the Nuggets were outscored by 34 24 points in just 2 games. That's absurd. That's a crazy crater. That's a really hard hole to dig yourself out of. But this season, they're only 14-16 in clutch games, which ranks 20th in the entire NBA. They're having a really poor season in the clutch. Now, I've been on the record as saying that clutch performance in the regular season doesn't matter all that much. I mean, it matters what the offense looks like and what what we can not tangibly, but what we can see on the floor matters. What we can see happens, the process matters, but the results can vary a lot. There's a lot of weird variance in moments like those, whether you're on the road, whether you're at home, whatever. There can be weird stuff with regular season clutch time stats, but as long as you see the process look right, I don't think I have a ton of worry about clutch time stats, but it is weird, and it is slightly concerning. And to me, what really has been the big process in the clutch that's looked different from past years is that the Nuggets just don't trust anybody else on this roster. They brought in some fresh blood, and they kind of gave themselves a little bit of a revamp. We're pretty far away from what they were in the championship run in 2023. But in the clutch this year, they just look a little different. I remember watching that game against OKC on Friday night, and it was just it was Jokic Murray two-man game for 24 seconds. But the whole thing about the two-man game is that it opens up advantages for your guys parked in the corner or on the wings or in the dunker spot, right? It's having to worry about those two working at the top of the key, doing pick and roll, inverted pick and roll, DHOs, whatever. It's worrying about the advantages that creates that's so hard to stop. But Jokic and or Murray, but particularly Jokic, just even if he got double teamed, whatever, let's say he received some strong side help from one of the OKC defenders, he felt no confidence in passing the ball to his shooter in the corner. And the couple of times that he did pass the ball to the guy in the corner, they missed. So it feels like this Nuggets team they don't have the answers for a lot of these questions, and they're just kind of unconfident in their roster. David Adelman had a quote after Sunday's loss where he kind of said the same. He was more so talking about the lineups without Jokic on the floor, but basically just saying we need to do something different. Something needs to change. There's we're 60 games into this season, and we feel like we don't know exactly what to do. We don't know what the rotations are. We don't know what the perfect lineups are. And that's why all season long, I've just kind of felt really uneasy about this Nuggets team this year specifically. And I know they've done a ton of this without Aaron Gordon. And Aaron Gordon is this he would alleviate a lot of problems, right? And even having just Peyton Watson back, even if he's not scoring 20 points per game and looking like, I don't know, Paul George, he would still be useful because he has some familiarity with Jokic. He plays well with them. He's proven himself to be a solid shooter and scorer this season. Maybe he would just provide the bump that they need. Even then, I'm not trusting those guys coming off of injury, and I'm not just gonna blindly trust it because we haven't seen it this year. So I'm a little uneasy on this Nuggets team. I'm probably gonna be pretty low on them as far as contenders this year. They rank 20th in defense. The defense just looks different and worse to me. It's particularly Jokic's defense. Just feels really lackluster this year. He's not giving any effort. I want to compare him to a pinch hitter, right? But your pinch hitter is the greatest. It's like Barry Bonds at bat, right? It's the greatest hitter of all time that you're subbing in on offense. But every time he's on defense, he's just taking a defensive possession off. And that's really concerning to me. The effort level is just not there. And you can argue that he can turn it on or whatever, but I don't know. I'd rather just see more effort from him. And I'm not 100% convinced that we'll get to the playoffs and he'll just all of a sudden start clicking, right? That he'll be trying on every single possession on both ends. Can you imagine how exhausting that will be? So I don't know. This is all kind of to say that the problems that the Nuggets used to suffer from, which was all of these lineup issues, especially without Jokic on the floor. They have returned in full, and it feels like there's concerning commentary from the coach of the team, and there's concerning just actions and body language and process results you see on the floor from Jokic, where he's hesitant. He doesn't trust these guys. He doesn't trust these guys at all. He doesn't trust the Cam Johnsons, the Christian Browns of the world. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what to think about them. I'd love to know what you think if you've watched much of the Nuggets as of recent. I'm keeping my eyes glued on them, just waiting for them to beat a really good team. They beat Boston on the second night of a back-to-back last week, and that could also be part of it. I think it's worth mentioning that their schedule post-All-Star break has been pretty difficult. They've had a lot of hard games. They faced OKC. I think in the stretch since Jokic returned, they played OKC twice. They played Boston. They played Minnesota like all last week. So the schedule has ticked up a little bit, so that could be part of it. But also, like, you got to beat the good teams. You have to beat the good teams. So if your record is just horrible against good teams, that doesn't spell well for me for good playoff success. We'll see what happens when Aaron Gordon comes back. Some of these issues could be alleviated, and they could kind of return to form. But it's something I'm keeping my eye on. It doesn't feel quite like Nuggets teams of the past. You know what I mean? Because in the past, you could trust that Jokic coming back in the fourth quarter would lead them to a clutch time win. But there's been commentary from the coach and Jokic himself that seems like there's less confidence for whatever reason this year. So keeping my eyes on that, watching it. Let me know what you think, if you've noticed anything similar, or if you think I'm wrong. I'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, for takeaway number 2, we're going to take a quick break from talking about all this playoff contention before returning to it for takeaway 3, because over the past couple weeks, it feels like I've only been talking about playoff teams and playoff scenarios. We're going to take a slight break from that. We're going to talk about a tanking team, and the Pelicans, man, what are we doing? The Pelicans are a prime example of why certain bad teams stay bad and why good teams, the teams that are always good, just go into rebuilds for a couple of years and then all of a sudden return to playoff contention, and why other teams just can't seem to figure it out. And the Pelicans are doing exactly that right now. So what I'm talking about specifically is that the Pelicans of recent, maybe over the last week and a half or so, have, especially since DeJounte Murray came back from injury, have resigned themselves to benching their 2 lottery picks from this most recent draft in Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears in favor of starting DeAndre Jordan, like 38-year-old DeAndre Jordan, is starting DeJounte Murray off of an Achilles tear. And, Sadiq Bey is still starting for this team and putting up a bunch of points. And anyways, basically, the Pelicans have benched Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen in favor of DeJounte Murray and DeAndre Jordan. Why? Why would they do that? Well, ever since there was like a brief moment in time in December, it was like early December, maybe like a 2-3 week stretch, where Zion was injured. Derek Queen came in. He started the season off the bench. And then he started starting a bunch of games. This was after Willie Green got fired. Derek Queen started starting a bunch of games, playing without Zion, playing next to like Trey Murphy, Sadiq Bey, Jeremiah Fears, Jordan Poole, and whatnot, Jose Alvarado when he was still on the team. Derek Queen looked awesome. The defense was still a real struggle, but on offense, he looked like this mobile hub big, like that we've kind of seen of recent years. Think of like an Alperen Şengün or Nikola Jokic, although he didn't look like Jokic out there necessarily, but you understand what I mean. Isaiah Hartenstein, like these big guys who have the ball in their hands a lot at the top of the perimeter, and they're operating out of there. They're getting downhill off of screens. They're throwing these backdoor passes. They're screening for guys, catching the ball in the short roll, kicking out to the corner, whatever, right? Doing a lot of things that looked really good, and there were some impressive results in that time, and he was looking like, maybe this is a guy that we can really start to build around. It feels like Zion isn't going to be here for super long. Maybe they trade off of Zion, keep Trey Murphy around. Then you got Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen. You got something interesting here at the very least. And then Zion came back, and the fit, as predicted, between Zion and Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears, for that matter. Three guys who just can't really shoot all that well. In Derek Queen and Zion Williamson's case, they can't shoot at all. So the spacing just crumpled. And the fit, it did nothing to highlight the skills of Derek Queen. So all of a sudden, Zion's back. Derek Queen has the ball in his hands less. And if Derek Queen doesn't have the ball in his hands on offense and the spacing is crumped, none of his skills are highlighted. All of the impressive things that we saw him doing, the chemistry he was working out with Trey Murphy III. The Pelicans did a lot of really interesting UCLA actions with Derek Queen, and he looked really awesome. And now all of a sudden you're just sticking him in like the dunker spot or like at the elbow or like kind of spacing or just having him set screens, and you completely muted any of the interesting things he did. And then, for Jeremiah Fears, a guy who likes to try to get into the mid-range and operate out of there and be speedy and quick coming off of screens and get downhill or whatever, you completely take away his ability to get into the mid-range, which he's not even a particularly efficient mid-range scorer. But when you crumple the floor like they did with these starting lineups that just don't have any shooting whatsoever, you just destroy any ability for Jeremiah Fears to look effective. So they put their two rookies in very poor positions to highlight their skill sets, which this team should know. You went out, they targeted these guys, and they drafted them. You should know damn well what they do well and what they don't do well. So why are we putting them in such compromised positions to succeed? All for what? The Pelicans don't have their pick this year. Obviously, we all remember the boneheaded trade at the draft. I'm not here to relitigate that. It's one of the worst NBA trades I've ever seen. But it happened. Now you have Derek Queen and you have Jeremiah Fears. You need to be doing everything in your power to make sure that those two talents that you have every ability to possibly succeed in the NBA. And the Pelicans are doing everything in their ability to make sure that they fail. Again, by just and now all of a sudden DeJounte Murray's back healthy, and they've got this team. They're playing for nothing at this point in the season. They've been so lackluster and awful all year. Now they're back and they're all kind of healthy, and they don't even have their pick this year, so they're not going out to try and lose games, right? So now they're not going out there trying to lose games, so they're trying to win games. But what? Why? Why would you bench your rookies in favor of these veterans so that you can win games for nothing? You're not going to make the play-in at this point. You're not going to touch the play-in. So what's the fucking point? I don't see the point in anything that they're doing. And again, this kind of results back to that first thing I said. This is why bad teams stay bad. You make poor asset management choices. The trade at the draft, one of the worst trades in NBA history. But you made it. You did it. It already happened. So there's no walking back on it. Now you're in a scenario where you have to make sure that these guys succeed because you made your bed. Now you made your bed. You have to lay in it. But they made their bed, and they're just I'm going to sleep on the floor instead. I'm going to start DeAndre Jordan. Why are we starting DeAndre Jordan? I don't even care if you want to start Zion and Derek Queen together and it looks awful. I don't care. Start Derek Queen and play him a ton of minutes. Let him be out there. And then let him play with Zion for 5 minutes. Then you can sub him out for DeAndre Jordan or whatever you want to do. And then try to put Derek Queen in better lineups for him to succeed. You have to give them opportunities to learn the NBA game and to learn more about themselves. And it just makes no goddamn sense to me whenever I tune into a Pelicans game. Again, this is of recent, the last 2 weeks or whatever, why they're making the choices that they're making. This is we're going to get to the offseason, and now what? Now what? Now what do we do? You know less about Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. Are you going to just keep DeJounte Murray and Zion Williamson around? Are you going to go try to make another trade for some more veteran help? Are you going to go sign some more veteran help, sign some whatever, like more Kevon Looney's of the world? And you're just going to go into next season with another ass team that doesn't make any sense together? Or are you going to go out of your way in this offseason to trade Zion, trade DeJounte Murray, just clear out the roster, bring in a bunch of young guys, start Derek Queen, start Jeremiah Fears, keep Trey Murphy around if you want because I like his shooting and veteran leadership, and then bring in a couple of other young guys that might be floor spacers, and then just see what you have? Otherwise, I don't understand what we're doing at all. Like, if Derek Queen never materializes into anything, or particularly if you get to a point like 2 years down the line and you're like, we need to trade Derek Queen because he's been here for a couple of years and, we kept Zion around. We always knew that fit might not be great, but now it's really bad. And then all of a sudden you're trading Derek Queen, in his third year or whatever because you don't think you can keep him around or you don't want to keep him around or he hasn't developed the way you want to. Well, now this trade looks even worse somehow. I don't know. It's just I hate what the Pelicans are doing. I hate this so much. I hate this for Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears because I kind of like both of those guys. I just want young players to succeed, right? And sometimes your succession or the level to which you succeed is determined on the competence of the organization to which you go to. I mean, look at, even just real quick, look at Cade Cunningham. Like 2 years ago, the Pistons lost 28 games in a row? They won like 14 games in a season, and it was all because they played like no spacing lineups. They had a coach in the NBA in Monty Williams, who just made some of the worst coaching choices we've ever seen, right? And then it was all of a sudden looking like Cade, who was this number 1 overall pick and like is this all-world talent. It's all of a sudden looking like, Cade's in his third, maybe going into his fourth year. Like, I don't know. Things look kind of iffy. He hasn't really won any games yet, but he was in just a terrible situation. All of a sudden, the Pistons go out. They sign a couple shooters. They bring in Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, right? A couple of these guys. Give him just a little bit of shooting. You start him in lineups where he's the point guard, and you play him around other guys where it makes sense. And all of a sudden, the Pistons make the playoffs. Now this season, they're the best. They're the best team in the Eastern Conference. They're almost tied for the best record in the entire NBA. I mean, all it took was like one offseason, a couple of competent signings, an understanding of your guys' strengths and weaknesses, and a new coach. And then all of a sudden, boom, they made the playoffs. They went from nothing to the playoffs so fast. And it's just about the competency of the organization, just making a couple of smart decisions. And this feels from the Pelicans like awful decisions, and that we will learn nothing and we will develop no skills for Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. And that's an absolute travesty. So Pelicans, please get off your bullshit, figure it out, and play your guys. Stop playing DeAndre Jordan. He doesn't need to play minutes. He really doesn't, I promise. But I'm going to move away from that because I feel like I'm getting heated. And we're going to talk about a game from Sunday night. Some very interesting implications, we'll say. All right, for my third takeaway, we're going to talk about one of the big matchups from Sunday night and some really interesting things that we can glean from it. And that was the matchup between the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs. Why was this game so interesting to me? Well, obviously, the Knicks blew out the Spurs at home in MSG. Good for the Knicks. The Knicks need solid wins at this point in the season. Not for their record, but just to kind of have that proof of concept, right? To prove that they're still around. Maybe they should still be considered top-tier contenders in the Eastern Conference. So they need to beat some good teams. And that was a really good win against a healthy Spurs team at home. They beat them by 25 points. And I think there was some really interesting thing that both the Spurs and Knicks did that I'm looking forward to. And this is more so about the Spurs going into the playoffs and some things I'm kind of observing. And as a matter of fact, a couple of podcasts ago, I said one of these things, something related was one of my biggest one of the biggest things I was watching heading down the stretch run of the season for the San Antonio Spurs, and that was cross-matching, I suppose is what you could say. I was interested in the way teams would defend Steph Castle. I don't think that's really interesting to talk about from this New York Knicks game, but I think it's very interesting to talk about what the Spurs did on defense and how the Knicks countered it and what we can learn from it, right? So a big trend in the NBA has become to find if a good team has a, let's say a good team has a wing or something that's not quite a floor spacer. The big trend is to have a great shot blocker. So Victor Wembanyama is a great shot blocker. And instead of putting like your shot blocker, let's say on the center, which you would do traditionally, is to rather put the shot blocker on the guy who plays on the wing but isn't a floor spacer. So for the New York Knicks, that is Josh Hart. Josh Hart is a guy who is 6'4". He basically starts, you could say on offense, he plays the 4 position for the Knicks, but he's 6'4", and he's just not really a floor spacer. So what the Spurs did was they were like, okay, instead of having Wemby guard Karl-Anthony Towns in the starting lineup, we're going to have him guard Josh Hart. So that way he can roam off of Josh Hart and play a lot of like weak side defense and just be a shot blocker, be a nuisance, prevent teams from getting into the paint. And historically, this has been a tactic we've seen used by a lot of teams. It's happened before. It happened to my dear old OKC Thunder back when Josh Giddey was on the team. Teams have been doing this against Josh Hart for a while. Teams do this against the Spurs when the Spurs used to start Harrison Barnes. And then the Spurs had to take Harrison Barnes out of the starting lineup and insert a better shooter in Julian Champagnie. So I was interested to see how this would look against the Knicks, putting Wemby on Josh Hart. And what the Knicks did to maybe neutralize what that does to their offense is to just start involving Josh Hart in every single action, and thereby involving Wemby in every action. Now, you may be thinking, you want to involve Wemby in every defensive action? You want Josh Hart to be setting screens and Wemby playing pick and roll defense? Turns out the answer is kind of yeah, because if you just let Wemby be a roaming shot blocker and like help defender, he's the best at it in the NBA, and he's going to completely neutralize your defense. And at that point, your only hope is to be able to like kick it out to Josh Hart and have Josh Hart take 10 threes or something and Josh Hart make a bunch of threes. That doesn't normally happen because he's not a good shooter, and other guys are not good shooters. So what's your counter to that? Well, to me, it's like bring Wemby into the action. And I've said this before. Teams need to like just attack Wemby relentlessly. You need to go into him. You need to create contact. You need to be aggressive with him. You need to attempt to draw fouls. I don't care if you think he's going to block everything. A, he can't block everything. He won't block everything. And we can see, and B, we can see with what the Knicks did on Sunday is that by bringing Wemby into the action every game, you pull him out of position around the rim. So it gives you easier access to get to the rim, and especially if you have a guy like Josh Hart. Josh Hart's a great passer. So what we saw a lot was, Josh Hart set a little screen. Maybe he'd slip it, maybe he wouldn't, but just set a little screen, roll to like the elbow, catch the ball, and then because Wemby is now out of position away from the basket, well, OG Anunoby or Karl-Anthony Towns in particular, like, let's just backdoor or let's cut or let's get in a position around the rim. And Josh Hart was just diamond dudes up. Or, maybe Josh Hart gets into the paint, right? He rolls into the paint. He catches the ball in the paint. Well, now Josh Hart is drawing help defense from the perimeter. That's not Victor Wembanyama. So teams are having help off of Karl-Anthony Towns or OG Anunoby or whoever, and he's able to kick out to the perimeter and get open threes. So I've always been kind of appalled why teams don't do this more. Like, whoever Wemby is parked on, you cannot let them not be a part of the action. You know what I mean? Like you if you do that, you let the Spurs win, and you let Wemby's best attributes on defense shine through, and you let them completely neutralize your offense. But if you bring him up into the action every single goddamn time, yeah, there's going to be moments where Wemby blows up the play, or he gets a steal, or he still is able to recover for a block or whatever, or the Spurs defend things perfectly. Yeah, that happens. That's going to happen. The Spurs are a pretty good defense. Like, they're going to figure some of those things out. But what it does accomplish, though, is that a lot of times it just gets them moving. It gets them out of their comfort zone. It gets them away from doing what they want to do. And especially because, again, a guy like Josh Hart is a good passer. It opens up a world of possibilities. So I was just watching that a lot. If you go watch the Knicks' offensive possessions when Wemby is on the floor, they're bringing his man into the play every single time. What that also does to me, and what is another big thing that I'm keeping my eye on here, is that Tucker's Wemby out. That makes him tired. He's a big dude. He's 7'5" or whatever. He's a big dude. Running and moving and sprinting all around the floor, you can see he gets tired, and you can see it kind of wears him as the games go along. And something that what makes Wemby less impactful is when he settles on offense for jumpers and pick and pop threes, and he's not getting to the rim and using his height and his freakish athletic abilities to open up like vertical spacing and finishing at the rim and offensive rebounds or whatever. You saw in that game against the Knicks, Wemby started to settle for a lot of jumpers. He'd get to the free throw line and take jumpers, and he wasn't making them. He was like 1 for 7 from 3. He was just like pick and popping every time on 3, and he wasn't hitting them. I love Wemby, and I think he's probably one of the 5 best players in the NBA. At this point, he's not the best player in the world. There are still some weaknesses you can poke at, especially on the offensive end. And he's not like the best shooter in the world. If you let him open up the entire floor and he's aggressive getting to the rim and trying to dunk on everybody and going for offensive rebounds, and he's taking and making threes, yeah, he's kind of unbeatable. But when he's just like settling for a lot of jump shots, he's not always the most effective jump shooter. So I think the Knicks did a great job of tiring him out and pulling him out of position on defense. And then on offense, like just packing the paint up against him and making it to be like, Wemby, you could get to the rim right now if you want to. It's going to be hell on earth, and it's going to be work. It's going to be work. And I think that's the way you kind of have to target him. Sometimes you watch games and you just see Wemby around the rim. You see guys get by their first defender or whatever. But then they see Wemby at the rim, and they're just like, let me pass out. Let me go away from this. Why are you doing that? Why? I understand that he's a great shot blocker, and dudes don't want to be blocked, and dudes don't want to be on a highlight reel or whatever. Go into him. If you see he's at the rim, elevate into him. He's normally going to give you some space because he's normally not up on you. So if you have like some downhill space coming at him, attack him every time. Bring him into actions. That's kind of just the way you have to play him. When you let him just be a rim deterrent and you let him help off the weak side and you let him easily get into the paint on offense or whatever, yeah, he looks like the most impactful player in the world, but there are ways to neutralize it. And we've seen it a couple times throughout the season. You get him to just start settling for jump shots because he's tired. His conditioning isn't amazing. He can't just play this like crazy up-tempo, all-over-the-place style for 40 minutes a game. That's a lot to ask. Again, he's 7'5". Dudes like that traditionally don't have the craziest conditioning in the world to cover all this ground in space. So I just thought that was super interesting rewatching that Knicks game. I don't think this was like a fluke thing for the Knicks. That was real. What we saw them do to the Spurs, they took the Spurs out of their comfort zone. They ended their win streak, and they kind of maybe not provided the exact template to beat them. I'd be super interested to see, like, in a series what the Spurs would do to kind of counter everything that the Knicks were doing against him. But it just, like, I don't know. I think the Spurs are a contender, they have to be. They have to be considered one because they've been one of the best regular season teams. But there are a lot of ways I think you can poke at them, and this displayed that, and I'll be super interested to see what the playoffs look like for them because we've just never really seen a team go from missing the play-in entirely to all of a sudden being the 2 seed, possibly almost maybe close to tying for 1 or maybe getting the 1 seed, right? Just making this enormous leap as a young team by having no playoff experience, getting to the playoffs, and then just like winning a championship. We've never seen that happen. That has never happened. So I don't anticipate that'll happen with the Spurs, but the Spurs are really good. Super interested to see what playoff matchups will look like for them. I also think for the Spurs, like, there's a bit of shooting concern with them, and I had that concern preseason. It's not mattered all that much as far as regular season wins, but maybe in some of these high leverage moments, the shooting could be a real problem for them. And then a couple of other things. The Spurs tried to put Steph Castle on Karl Anthony Towns. I think a lot in the first half. You know, Karl Towns wasn't, like, very aggressive. All of a sudden, to, like, start the second half, that dude's just, like, rebounding like a monster. He is muscling and bowling that dude over. That was awesome to see from Towns. Yeah, I love when he gets aggressive. That's been the thing all year, right? Will he, won't he kind of thing that we've been doing with the Knicks. That was fun to see. Interesting strategy from the Spurs, I suppose. And then just another minute thing, the Spurs were picking on De'Aaron Fox defensively in that game. Obviously, with Steph Castle guarding up to try and guard Karl Anthony Towns, De'Aaron Fox received the Jalen Brunson assignment. Brunson was going at him every time the Spurs were in transition, or the Knicks were in transition, and OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges were matched up with him. They were attacking the hell out of him and having a lot of success. So another thing to keep your eye on when you're thinking about matchups is how will De'Aaron Fox hold up in a playoff defensive setting. It's been a minute since he's been there. So I think that's all I have to say on that. You guys have to let me know if you had some of the same observations about that game as I did. But really interesting stuff. We'll see what it looks like in the playoffs. But that's all for my takeaways this week. Let's look at a couple things that I'm looking at coming up. All right, now that takeaways are wrapped up, we're just going to talk about a couple of things that I'm watching moving forward. Some fun matchups, as always, to talk about. Some good recent matchups are going to be, these teams are going to be seeing each other very quickly once again. One thing that I'm looking at right now, Minnesota, I think they're 6-1 in their last 7 games. Kind of streaking right now. They beat the Nuggets on Sunday, and they're doing their hot and cold thing as the Minnesota Timberwolves are ought to do. After Sunday, I thought Anthony Edwards had a really interesting comment where I always appreciate that Ant as a superstar is very forward. He doesn't hide any of his feelings. He's very honest with the media, and that leads to some interesting answers. Back in January, he had a complaint about, he said, like, I hate when teams, double or blitz me. Like, I don't like passing the ball. I want to have the ball in my hands. I want to score. Didn't like that. Thought that was an immature comment, and that's not, like, a comment I would want to hear out of, like, my leader or the best player on my team. Is what it is, though. That's kind of his mentality. But after Sunday's game, I think Dane Moore had, who's an excellent beat writer for the Minnesota Timberwolves, Dane Moore asked him kind of like a follow-up question because Denver blitzed him a lot and showed him a lot of doubles. And he said something along the lines of, I realize that gives us an advantage. And if they're doubling me, that means we have 4 players on offense now. They only have 3 players on defense, and I believe my 4 is better than their 3. I like that. A little bit of growth and maturity from him. That's going to be a thing kind of his entire career until he really figures this out, and I don't feel like he has figured out the doubles and blitzing things. He's not a super willing passer. That's just not who Anthony Edwards is. It's fine. That's his mentality. That is what it is. It's kind of why I'm lower on Anthony Edwards as a whole until I really see him fix that part of his game and become a guy who is not looking to just score or whatever, but a guy who's looking for the best shot on offense every time, the best possibility to score on offense every time is when I'll kind of, I think when we'll see the true leap from him where he gets into like elite territory. But I like that comment from him. Looking at you, Minnesota, I'm keeping my eye on you. You're streaking right now, but I don't know. They have a couple of like dumb games this week against lower level competition, and they are famously a team that will happily lose to lower level competition. So we'll see Minnesota. Talking about a player, Will Riley. Do you know that name? Who does Will Riley play for right now? Quiz time. Will Riley is a rookie for the Washington Wizards. He was picked with like the 21st pick in this most recent draft out of Illinois. He's a 6'10" forward, super skinny guy. Was like an interesting scoring wing in college, and he's doing some things for the Wizards right now. I feel like it's necessary to point out. Over his last 15 games, he's up to averaging like 15 points per game on 44, 38, 77 splits. Encouraging stuff. Just something I wanted to note. Nobody's talking about the Wizards other than Trae Young coming back. So, yeah, there's something interesting there. Again, he's really big, long, tall shooter. Will take the ball and get downhill. All right. I lost some connection in my recording for a second, so I don't know exactly what it cut out. But I was just saying Will Riley's an interesting 6'10" wing, can shoot the ball, will take the ball, get downhill, get into the mid-range and score. Rim finishing is interesting. He's super skinny, so he's going to have to put some weight on. He'll get moved around a ton, but because he's so tall and has these long-ass arms, he can finish at the rim with some authority sometimes. I disconnected again, so we're just going to rapid fire through the rest of this. Two interesting Pistons games this week. We had the Pistons playing the Cavaliers rematch of the century on Tuesday night, I believe that is. And then the Pistons play the Spurs again on Thursday night. Cannot wait to see that. Round one was so much fun last Monday. We have the Thunder playing the Knicks for the first time this season on Wednesday night. That's unfortunately coming on the second night of a back-to-back. Shout out to the schedule makers who keep giving us competition or keep giving us games against the best teams in the NBA on the second night of a back-to-back. But love that. That'll be fun to see either way. Big and my last one here. Sorry, my last one. Big play-in implications in the East. We got the Hawks versus the Bucks. Bucks are making a little bit of a. They lost by 30 to the Bulls this past weekend. So maybe things aren't as positive as I am about to frame them here. But the Bucks are making a little bit of a play-in push. I don't know when Giannis is supposed to come back. If he is going to come back, I assume he is at this point. But the Bucks were kind of streaking before this unfortunate game over the weekend. So hey. If the Bucks want to make a play-in push, they want to, retain Giannis this offseason, they got to win this big one against the Hawks. So we'll see how that works out. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up now. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. If you made it to this point in the video, I love and appreciate you. Go ahead and follow along on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. Feel free to leave a 5-star review. That would be super dope. I don't think I have any of those yet. So you can be the first. You could be the first. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to subscribe to the page. I'm going to have a fun video on Jaden McDaniels out later this week. I do hope to catch you all in the next one. Have a wonderful night and goodbye.